Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Reality Podcast. It's Layla, one of your hosts. Our other host cannot join us today, but she'll be back next week, and it'll be as if she never left, like nothing happened. So, today we're going to have a fun, open discussion. We're just going to have a little chat about desire and wanting things that we cannot have and yearning, all that fun stuff. That's maybe not so fun. I don't know. There's a lot of different schools of thought on it. During my research, I fell into multiple rabbit holes that had multiple different opinions. Philosophers have varying opinions on desire and yearning and all that fun stuff. So we're just going to look at it from an objective perspective, just to kind of narrow down what desire looks like for, I guess, most people. So yeah, we're gonna specifically be talking about desire in the form of what's known as appetitive desire. And for my research, I mainly focused on this chapter from Willem Hoffman's book, and this chapter is specifically desire and desire regulation. So that's really what this video is going to be about today, because it's a practice that I think we could all call a little bit more attention to, especially in this time of overconsumption and overstimulation and over everything, over easy, over eggs, over life. We could all learn to regulate a bit more. So let's just jump right in. So Hoffman describes desire, appetite of desire, as those motivations that propel us to approach certain stimuli in our environment and engage in activities with them that provide us with a relative gain in immediate pleasure, including relief from discomfort. So this could mean a lot of things. This could be related to food, social media, shopping, sex. Like, it could mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. I think usually when we think of desire, we're just thinking of it from the perspective of, what do I want? How can I get what I want? And what will I receive from this situation of what I want? How will this satisfy me? And honestly, that's kind of more of the feeling aspect of desire. And we tend to only associate desire with that emotion of wanting, when in reality, desire is a complex combination of feelings. Desire can be mixed with pleasure, it can be associated with guilt, it could be associated with learning, like it could be associated with so many things. So I think focusing on the wanting aspect is what makes desire a little bit harmful, because sometimes we desire things that we cannot have. And something about that makes us want it even more. So I like to get a little, down to the bottom of that too. It could just be the inexplicable feeling of humanity, of always chasing after something, but we really have to think about why, like why we enjoy the chase, why we're comfortable with the chase. I don't know if that's because of like our fight or flight or something, and the animal primal instinct in us just wants to be in this state of survival. I don't know, but it may not be healthy, it may not be healthy. The thing about being in a constant state of wanting is that it separates you from being where you are, and it creates delusion inherently. You have this idea of what you'll feel when you receive what it is that you desire, but you don't actually know if that's how you'll feel. You have this idea of what it is that you desire, but you don't actually know because you don't have it, so you don't know it to be true. You are more obsessed and desiring the idea of whatever it is that you're reaching for. So to me, that is just a reminder that, you know, it's important to call that power back to yourself, because your desires themselves objectively are not inherently special. They're only special because you're making them special. So you're taking time, energy, creativity to fantasize about these desires and what it is that they'll do for you or how you'll feel when you have them. Giving you that little dopamine hits, it triggers something in the limbic brain, and it becomes a sense of reward, especially when you get closer to what it is that you desire. You're tap dancing on the edge of it. You're getting more and more eager in the anticipation, but the satisfaction can be anticlimactic. And therein lies the problem, because now we go desiring the next thing instead of just being happy where we are. And to that, I'd like to just look at Marcus Aurelius' book. He was a Stoic at some point in time. Meditations, great book. And I quote, "When we have meat before us and other food, we must say to ourselves, 'This is the dead body of a fish and the dead body of a bird or of a pig.' And again, 'This Falernian wine is only a little grape juice, and this purple robe some sheep's wool dyed with the blood of a shellfish.' This is how we should act throughout life. Where the things that seem worthy of great estimation, we ought to lay them bare and look at their worthlessness, and strip them of all the words by which they are exalted." T. Because, like, if we were not here to make things special and to give things praise, they would just be neutral. You know, it doesn't mean that things don't matter. It just means that we give them more purpose when we integrate them into our lives. Because we are providing said thing with purpose. Before, it just existed, but now we are giving it purpose. So when we're talking about your object of desire, inherently that person, that thing, it had its own state of being before it entered your atmosphere, and now you're placing these projections onto that object of desire and giving it that purpose in your life, making you feel that emotion. But the whole time, that thing has no role, no idea what it's doing for you, because it's not doing anything. In this whole buildup of the chase and the anticipation, you are providing this thing with meaning for your life. You are giving it meaning. You're the only constant. So we have to remember, you're making yourself feel this way. It's you, babes. No one else is playing a role in this fantasy of yours except for you and your imagination. You have the ability to make yourself feel the way that you are hoping this external thing will make you feel. Because you have to remember, feelings are not physical. They're not. Which is why when we chase things and we achieve them, suddenly it doesn't hit how we expect it to. Because it's not what we fantasized, because that wasn't real. Because that was just our perception. We've been bamboozled, hoodwinked. And that's okay to have your own perceptions on things and ideas of what you want, but we also have to face the reality that things may not play out that way, and that's okay. Because it is honestly very freeing to know that you yourself can stir up those own emotions within you. You don't have to wait for something to arrive in your life for you to feel something. You do not need permission to feel anything. If you want love, feel love, be love, embody love, and you will have love. Like, whatever it is that you're wanting, it is within your grasp. You don't have to wait for external stimuli to flip the dopamine receptors in your mind and give you the reward you think you need to earn when you can give it to yourself free of charge. How's that sound? Free 99. Happiness, free 99. Okay. And I don't know if that's just like a human complex or a productivity complex. I don't really know what it is. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I'm just here to say, we can reconsider the way we look at these things. And another thing is the relationship between desire and temptation, because those are two different things, even though they're often used interchangeably. Desire is its own separate category of wanting, whereas temptation is being in a state of, it's a form of desire. It's a desire with a but. Like, okay, I want this thing, but I know I shouldn't have it, or I know I can't have it. But something's telling me I want it anyways, And in those instances, the best way to combat that form of temptation would be to distance yourself. And it doesn't, that could be something as simple as just keeping yourself busy. Because sometimes we have to really ask ourselves the big questions as to why it is we feel tempted by these things. Like, is it just a stroke at our ego? Even the thought of I'm being tempted, that's an egoic statement in itself, because you are personifying this idea of vexing and vexation onto you, almost as if it is personal. When in reality, we all go through things, and, life happens. It is ultimately how you respond to those things, and that can really, and how you view them. And when we look at desire, I think the relationship is a bit backwards. We tend to view desire as something to seek and something to chase after, something that we want, when in reality our desires should be coming from our principle and morals. So if you're finding yourself desiring something that does not align with your integrity, you have to start to question why it is that you want these in the first place, when it doesn't align with anything that you'd actually want. And that in itself is just another explanation as to how desire and wanting are also not synonymous. Desire encapsulates so many different emotions all at once, just hyper fixated on one thing. It's honestly more of a possessive obsession feeling, and that's the thing. Feelings cannot be possessed. They cannot be attained, really. Feelings arise whether we like it or not, and they leave whether we like it or not. They can't be bought. They can't be won over, really, unless you allow them to. So with this idea of desire being something to be objectified, it is impossible to associate feelings specifically with that desire. It is definitely something mental, something within yourself, something within ourselves. So we just have to look at it from a place of removing the ego and really stripping ourselves down and asking ourselves the hard questions of why. And I think part of that is being objective in a situation, and it is exceptionally hard to be objective of things that you desire. It's very hard, because that gets in the way of the feeling. But it's very important to understand that empathy, ethos, logos, they all go hand in hand. So we have to associate the logic with the emotion. Um, and I'd also like to, I'm going to be quoting this book a lot today. Just go ahead and cop this, okay? Marcus Aurelius, again, this is one of his quotes. I think it's book 5. Things themselves touch not the soul, not in the least degree, nor have they admission to the soul, nor can they turn or move the soul, but the soul turns and moves itself alone, and whatever judgments it may think proper to make, such it makes for itself the things which present themselves to it. All right, well, that covers that, yeah. So just keep in mind that these desires that you have are just notches on your ego, it's just these wishes that we want to satisfy who we are physically. It has nothing to do with who you embody and who you are as a person, because that's something that cannot be seen. It's something that cannot be attained. The things that truly fulfill you are not the things that we put unnecessary attention on. And also, your soul doesn't really know the difference between what is good and bad. And hear me out. I'm just saying the soul is neutral, okay? Obviously, don't do anything shitty. Don't be a shitty person, But I'm just saying the soul is neutral. It requires balance. So when you are having these feelings of desire, I think it's really important, and just feelings in general, to not be so quick to rationalize or identify them, but just to feel them. They're literally called feelings. You're inging the feel, okay? You're not really supposed to think about the feeling. You're supposed to just feel the feeling. Your thoughts and your feelings are two different things. Okay, so let's be careful with that. When these feelings do arise, just allow them, make space, and move accordingly with your thoughts. And then you can categorize how you feel once you've allowed your body to kind of disperse of all of the energy that it's been holding on to with these ideas and these fantasies and delusions, okay? And that's why it's really important to prioritize those feelings and those emotions, because our thoughts are not always our own, like 99% actually. They're not always our own. A lot of our thoughts are other people's thoughts, and whatever it is that we've consumed. It doesn't even have to be a conversation that you're actively having or something that you're actively engaging with. It's just the passing by of everyday life is being absorbed by our brains. And that does have an impact on the way that we think and the way that we perceive things. So inevitably it has an impact on what we project and what we believe to be true. So our feelings are really that guiding force that are there to navigate us in what it is that we need to see, what it is that really requires our attention. And our feelings are really plagued by our thoughts trying to identify them, because if you think about it, there are emotions that we cannot explain, that are just there, and we try to fit them in one of the few boxes that we've allowed ourselves to feel in the past, what's familiar. But our feelings cannot be contained to a label any more than we can. So sometimes when we have these desires and these feelings, we need to be focused more on what the feeling is showing us when it arrives, where it is taking place in our body. Looking out for those somatic signals rather than trying to rationalize why you're feeling this way, what it is that you're feeling, who you're feeling it for, what you're associating it with. Like, that is more of a waste of time because it gets in the way of what the feeling is trying to do. The feeling is not here for you to rationalize it. It is here for you to feel it. It is a signal, okay? It's a message. So when you do have these feelings, it's really important to just pay attention and see what it is that the desire is reflecting onto you. Because oftentimes the object of desire, like I mentioned, does not even know it's the object of desire. It doesn't know. This is just something that you have going on with yourself, you know. So really sit back and sometimes if you're having like a hard time maybe figuring out why this is something that you desire, look at how look at it as a reflection of you. I mean, it definitely is. You want it. Everything is reflection, but something that you want is something that is calling onto you, and that is something that is going to reveal a lot of things about yourself. Um, why you want things, what you like about it, what it is that you see in it that you see or don't see in yourself. And oftentimes the things that we desire are external, and it is usually in some form of gratification or validation. And to that I say, validate yourself. Who are you without your desires? Who are you without your achievements? That's a hard one. In this article called Stoicism and Desire Regulation by Ryan Bush, he mentioned some desire regulation practices, and this one in particular stood out to me. It's called negative visualization, and there is a Buddhist practice. It's a branch of this called anicca, or impermanence, or as the Dalai Lama has termed it, pain insurance. And basically this practice is just the intention of stripping yourself of everything, who you think you could be, who you want to be, where you see yourself, just stripping yourself down as if you had not achieved anything that you would ever imagined that you could, or anything that you want. You don't have it. What does that life look like? And the goal of this practice is really to just remind us of what life could look like if things, don't go the way that we desire, the way that we imagined. And it just strips you down to your raw self, and it forces you to look at all of the things that you do have, all of the things that you're anticipating. Like, for example, for me, I'm in college, right? And it's the last 2 weeks of school, y'all. And I'm trying to hang it in there, I'm trying to hold on. And I often forget that education is a privilege. It's something that was fought for by people for generations, still being fought for some reason. And having access to that education is what is going to propel me in my career, in my mind, in my life. And something that I use as motivation is like thinking about my life in the future and all the things that I want and I have. But something like this practice would argue not to focus on the things that you could have and focus on what you have right now. Is that enough for you? Is where you are right now okay? And the answer is yes. But it's okay to want more for yourself. Like it's always acceptable to want more for yourself. But it is when you start to associate your happiness with more that it becomes more of an issue, because your happiness should not be dependent on what life could bring you or what could happen for you. That is suffering. We've mistaken the two. And with that, just the whole practice of desire regulation, it's very similar to that. Well, I imagine, I've never actually tried like stimulation regulation to really say, but I imagine it's similar to that, of the sorts of just bringing down our levels of gratification and desire through practices that are more grounding, because it's very easy to get swept up in your desires, forget where you are, who you are, and just be distracted from the things that you actually want to achieve in the present. And that's how you know you've got a real problem. So another good way to implement some practice would be gratitude. Just remembering all that you have, the air between your lungs, the electromagnetic field within your heart pumping on its own, your brain making you do all of these things simultaneously, just having the gratitude for being here, being present in the first place. And also just remembering that when you are present, that is when you have the chance to feel. That is when you have the chance to observe what it is that you're feeling and remember who you are. Your feelings are probably the most accurate portrayal of who you are. If you want love, feel love, embody love, and you will have love. You will have it. So, even the idea of the law of attraction, living in the state of which the wish or desire is fulfilled, actively living as if the desire that you have set or that you are seeking is already within your grasp. You already have it. Who's going to tell you don't have it? A hater? Right. Okay, so I think another good way to do this would be mindfulness. And mindfulness is probably the most simple way to do it, because, as I mentioned, your desires have because it's purely psychological. It's literally, desire feeds off of a reward system in your brain. So because of that, and because you start to identify your desire with emotions, it is very, very easy for it to take up a lot of space in your mind. A lot of space. So the best way to do this would probably be mindfulness because it forces you to not think. So mindfulness practices could just look like waking up in the morning, not listening to music right away, not checking your phone right away. I like to wake up in the morning, I'll check my phone to see the time, because I don't always have an alarm, or I do, I turn my alarm off, whatever. And I don't listen to music while I get ready. And when you're walking outside or you're in the car or wherever you're going, just notice things. Take the time out to be a little bit more attentive? Whatever. What color are the trees? We're in spring. Are there any flowers on the trees? What color are the flowers? What do the flowers look like? What do the flowers smell like? What's going on with the sidewalk? What are these people? Who are these people? What are they wearing? Give yourself that chance to actually engage with your physical reality, So that way you're not spending so much time up here curating an imaginary one. Just a thought. And that will just take off so much relief from the idea of thinking about whatever it is that you're thinking about that you maybe don't want to be thinking about, because you're thinking about something else. You're busy. Also, moving your body, because the body holds a lot of emotion, a lot of weight, a lot of stress, and sometimes even just being in that state of desire and wanting to get rid of that desire can induce stress, which your body holds on to. Marcus Aurelius does talk about that in this book as well. I couldn't find the quote, but he mentioned something like removing the desire to remove the desire, or something like that. Hopefully I can find it and I'll put it in. But I remember when I heard it for the first time, and it just made so much sense to me, because that is the way to be free. I feel as though we feel these things for a reason. We do. They're there to teach us things, call in awareness to things that we have to work on within ourselves. Everything that you desire, anything. So when we're just so quick to try and get rid of it or ignore it or cast it out, or even worship it or praise it, the minute that desire is either removed or it is satisfied, you're on to the next thing. And you learned nothing. So it's important to really sit with those desires face to face and hear them out, you know? That doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to act on them in a way that's harmful for you, you know? Get in your bag. But if this is like a desire that's kind of plaguing you, or, you know, isn't the most beneficial to you or your path, and you want to clear it out, give yourself time, face it with compassion, and turn that repression into expression. And that could look like alchemizing your desire. There was a largely believed school of thought regarding desire being a catalyst for change and expression and creativity. And that is true, because in all this time that you're spending fantasizing about what it is that you're desiring, that is creation. You are literally creating a reality in your mind. Like, you are literally spending time crafting, curating a storyline, word for word, bar for bar. You've got dialogue going up in here. You're writing a script. So it's like all of that creative energy could be put towards something else. And that in turn will play into desire regulation, because you're managing your desire in a healthy way. So, you know, don't always beat yourself up about what it is that you're thinking about, because, again, your thoughts are not your own. And half the time, you don't even actually want that thing. You don't. You were probably influenced or bored. You know. And that's another thing, just, you know, when we're talking about desire, we have to think about whether or not it's something we actually want, or if we're just fucking bored and we're using this as a form of escapism. Because it can be very easy to get swept up into our desires and skip out on all of the things that are happening to us IRL. Desire puts you in a state of chase. And if we're going after things that we are passionate about and we wish to achieve, we need devotion, okay? We need commitment. We need to be anchored, tethered to this thing, but not from a place of expectation or wanting something externally. That's the difference between desire and devotion. Devotion calls for action, and that action requires the work to be done within yourself. It leads down a path of self-discovery. Devoting yourself to your feelings rather than desiring a scenario will help aid you in achieving what it is that you really want, instead of spending so much time thinking about what it is that you think you want based off of feelings that you have not felt. Not really. Call into some devotion. for yourself. Get closer with yourself. Whenever you have desires that arise, see it as an opportunity to get closer to yourself. Because that, in my opinion, is a form of a trigger. And all triggers are here to do is to bring us closer to ourselves and make us question why it is we feel the way that we do and what it is that we're hoping to gain from the situation and why. Just why. That's really the question of everything. It's so funny, like when you're a kid, everybody hates when you ask the question why, but like that curiosity is really just what's going to make or break how you move forward in those situations and these scenarios, because getting down to the why will lead you to the how to get shit done. But I think I've yapped enough, and I want you guys to really think about what it is that you currently desire in this life, in this present moment, and just take a moment to view them objectively. Write them down, view it objectively, see how that aligns with you and your path, and whatever it is that you wish to achieve, I know you will have, because you already have it. And that is the power of the mind. I don't have a T quote, don't kill me, but I do have a little quote that I'd like to read from this book again. Book 5. Again. Such as are thy habitual thoughts, such also will be the character of the mind. For the soul is dyed by the thoughts. Dye it then with a continuous series of such thoughts as these. For instance, where a man can live, there he can live well. But he must live in a palace. Well then, he can also live well in a palace. And again, consider that for whatever purpose each thing has been constituted. For this it has been constituted, and towards this it is carried. And its end is in that towards which it is carried. And where the end is, there also is the advantage of the good of each thing. Now the good for the reasonable animal is society. For that we are made for society has always been shown above. Is it not plain that the inferior exists for the sake of the superior? But the things which have life are superior to those which have not life. And of those which have life, the superior are those which have reason. So just keep that in mind whenever you are having these desires, that everything is associated with the habit of the mind and the state of the mind. If you are desiring something and you are putting your energy onto it and it's taking up space in your mind and it's not really aligned with your purpose, that is what your mind's going to project, and you're going to be in a state of chaos, a state of comatose. So it's just really important to tread that carefully, but of course meet it with compassion. We are human, and also don't be so quick to objectify your emotions and categorize them to fit your narrative. Be honest with yourself about what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're experiencing. Be honest with whomever or whatever it is that you desire in this life. And remember that everything is neutral. So call back that power that you've given to that person, to that thing, and remind yourself that you had the ability to bring that desire and that feeling that you wish to come from the desire to yourself without having to prove yourself. So, yeah. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Much love.